Hello friends, welcome to Engineering Funda family. In this video, I'm going to explain you retransmission techniques in TCP. Basically, there are two categories of retransmission in case of segment is getting lost. First category, that is they're based on timeout based retransmission, and second category, that is they're based on acknowledgement. I'll explain you both of those techniques with practical examples, so that will give you more clarity. Let me explain you first how timer based timeout retransmission happens in TCP. So for that, let me take one example. Here if you observe, we are having host 1 and host 2, where host 1 is sending frame to host 2, where you see this frame that is having sequence number 5001 and segment size that is 500 byte. Here if you observe, host 2 is there, and see this frame that is getting lost somewhere in the medium, right? So what will happen here? See, here we are having window which will be there at the side of H2, and this H2 host is waiting for which sequence number? 5001 sequence number, right? And window size that I have considered here, that is 10,000 byte, and maximum segment size that is 500 byte. Now see, what will happen is, here H2 is waiting for this segment with sequence number 5001. But because of some issues on network, this segment is getting lost. So here in timeout based retransmission, what will happen is, here after timeout means, see, with each segment there will be well defined timer. With each segment there will be well defined timer. So after timeout, this H1 will forward, H1 will retransmit this sequence again, right? So you see now this segment that is retransmitted here, that is having sequence number 5001 and size is 500 byte, right? And now see, here I am considering this segment is received successfully, right? So what will happen? This segment now that is getting stored inside this window, right? And that is having size of 500 byte. So obviously after receiving this H2 will be giving acknowledgement. In that acknowledgement, what H2 will say? H2 will say, now I'm just waiting for sequence number, that is this plus 500, right? So that will be 5501. And in acknowledgement, it will be saying, now I'm just waiting for sequence number, that is 5001. And as if this acknowledgement receives over here successfully, then H1 will be having idea about, okay, now retransmitted frame that have been received by H2 successfully. So here normally, see, with every segment there will be well defined timer. If this segment is not received here, right? If this segment is not received here, in that case after timeout, H1 will be retransmitting that frame, right? Now there is a second category. In that second category, there will be duplicate acknowledgement. In some books, you will be observing that is also referred as early retransmission. I'll tell you like why it is duplicate acknowledgement or early retransmission. See, here I'm taking one example. In that example, you see H1 is forwarding data to H2, and H2 is having window size that is 10,000 byte and maximum segment size that is 500 byte. Right now H2 is waiting for sequence number 5001. So you see H1 is forwarding frame that is received by H2 successfully, and that is having sequence number 5001, right? And size of segment that is 500 byte. So let us consider this segment is received successfully, right? So now H2 will be waiting for which sequence number? H2 will be waiting for 5001 plus 500, that will be 5501, right? Now here it is not compulsory that H2 will be giving acknowledgement for successfully received segment. See, in my last video I have told you there is hybrid sliding window protocol used in TCP. So there will be cumulative acknowledgement, right? It is not compulsory to forward acknowledgement for every successfully received segment, right? So it is not mandatory here that this H2 will be giving acknowledgement for this received frame. Now see what is happening here. H1 is forwarding next segment, which is having sequence number 5001, but that is getting lost somewhere in the medium. And as it is getting lost somewhere in the medium, H2 will not receive it, obviously, and H1 is not even knowing like this segment is lost somewhere, right? So what will happen is H1 will be forwarding next segment. Let us assume next segment is having sequence number 6001 with size 500 byte. So here that is getting received successfully, but H2 was waiting for which sequence number? 5001, but still it will store this segment. You see, still it will store this segment, right? And that is having what sequence number? 6001, right, with 500 byte. And see here, let us talk about first how transmission is happening. So here after that H1 is forwarding next sequence number which is having size of 500 byte with sequence number 6501. So 6501, that is coming from here, right? 6001 plus 500, that is 6501. So 6501, and that is received successfully here. So it will store it over here, right? Now after that again H1 is forwarding another segment with sequence number 7001. You see 6501 plus 500, that will be 7001, right? So it will be storing that segment over here. But problem is what? Problem is there regarding this segment which is having initial sequence number, that is 5501. Now see what is happening here. Here as soon as this H2 is receiving this segment which is having sequence number 6001, but it was waiting for which sequence number? 5501. So what it does is it will be forwarding acknowledgement, and in that acknowledgement what it says is it is waiting for a segment which is having sequence number, that is 5501, right? See, when it receives another frame, when it receives another segment, at the time also it is giving acknowledgement which says I am also waiting for this sequence number, although I have received these segments, but I need to fill this gap, and for that it will be giving second acknowledgement. When it receives third segment which is having sequence number this, at that time also it will say like I have not received this segment, right, which is having sequence number 5501, right? Although it have received these three segments, it will be storing that inside this window, but during that reception it will be giving acknowledgement as well, which indicates I am waiting for a segment which is having sequence number 5501. So this is how it will be forwarding three acknowledgement. Those are duplicate acknowledgement, which indicates this H2 is waiting for segment which is having sequence number 5501. That is referred as three duplicate acknowledgement for early retransmission. You see here this segment that is getting lost. So obviously, as I have told you, here without acknowledgement there will be retransmission after a timeout, right? But you see, if you wanted to have early retransmission, then based on acknowledgement also it is possible. So after three acknowledgement, H1 will get to know there is a segment which is missing over here, so it will forward that, right? It will forward that, and once it will forward this, and once it is received successfully over here, H2 will fill this gap. H2 will fill this gap, right? So let me mark it with other color. Which one was missing over here, right? So this segment that was retransmitted segment based on three duplicate acknowledgement. And if you observe here timeout, so timeout was happening somewhere over here. So even if those acknowledgements were not there, if these acknowledgements were not forwarded by H2, then also after timeout, as per this explanation, there will be retransmission, right? But if you wanted to have early retransmission in H2 with H2, in that case there will be three acknowledgement. So basically there are two types of retransmission. One is based on timeout. In timeout, you should know with every segment there will be timer. After timeout, there will be retransmission. Like if you observe here, whatever segments those were being forwarded by H1, with all the segments there will be timer. And after timeout, those all the segments will be retransmitted. But before that, obviously H2 will be giving acknowledgement. And it is not compulsory for every segment there will be acknowledgement. There will be cumulative acknowledgement. I have already told you in my last video that this TCP is working with hybrid sliding window protocol, in which it will be using features of selective repeat as well as go back and. In selective repeat, you should know it will accept segments out of order. I have told you, see here H2 was waiting for 5001, but H2 have received 6001, H2 have received 6501, H2 have received 7001 sequence number, right? It have stored that inside window. The reason is window was having capabilities. It was having capacity of 10,000 bytes, so it can obviously store that inside this window, right? And as it can store that inside window, there can be out of order reception, right? But still H2 is waiting for this, and for that it was giving acknowledgement here. And even if those acknowledgements were not there, after timeout there will be retransmission. So that is how retransmission is happening in TCP. I hope you have understood this. Still, if anything that you would like to share, please note it down in comment section. I'll be happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching this video.